The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondel.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Stage Door Show. This is Dave Hondel. Tonight, my guest is an award-winning writer and director who's been recognized at renowned film festivals. She's currently in post-production on a couple of projects, which we'll talk about. So please welcome Alysha Haran to the show. Welcome, Alysha.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on. And, Alysha, I want to start out with this, as a writer, I always respected, writers, because obviously everything starts with the written word. And, for your own journey, where did you start writing? And I mean, how did that come to be that you wanted to be a writer, not only, to be a writer, but also do it as a career?
Well, I think, hindsight's 2020. So when you look back at sort of, the things that either you missed as a kid or people pointed out to you about what they remember about you, it seems like a real central thing about me was always writing or telling stories. I think I started to understand that I had this knack when I kind of acknowledged that I don't like writing and yet somehow kept doing it. So, so that was really sort of the clue to my own self-awareness that I had this in me. And I think, when I was younger, the idea was, oh, okay, I'm going to put pen to paper and I'm going to write. And as I got older and, life happens, I realized that writing is a really intrinsic part of who I am. And that there will be times when I'm really intentional about doing it and times where I just sort of step back from it. And that was a great moment of growth for me, because that really just means the writing's going to come with me through the entire journey. Rather than be something that I have to sit down and, use all the tools and tricks that writers learn to work through blocks or, stay disciplined in the craft.
And you also direct, and, as a writer and a director, directing your own written word, and sometimes maybe on set, something might not work, I guess, as well as you thought so, and when you wrote it down. Do you ever pivot when you're on set as a director and say, you know what, we got to switch this up because it's not working the way I thought it was?
Yeah, I do. Actually, what you just said is like the biggest fear of mine for being a director of my own material, because I feel like that's the thing, like that's anyone's weakest spot when you are, because I'm like sort of the quality check for the writing, and as a writer, I'm the quality check for the directing. And so it's very hard to wear both hats and stay objective. But there is this point where after I get it on the page, I sort of shift into production mode and like fire the writer version of me and kind of look at the material from that place of like, I have to be able to execute this and make this a story that visually makes sense and is engaging. So I think that's kind of where I'm able to keep a little bit of a check on myself. But yes, there have definitely been times on set where if I, after a couple times, I've been very lucky to work with incredible actors. So if after a couple tries, either they or myself can't quite make the moment work, I always take that pause and go, is it the material? And, try to write strategically where there's like little bailouts where, okay, well, if I don't, can this moment work without the lines, right? Which is like every writer's worst nightmare to have like your lines get edited out. But I find that if you can make the moment work without the line, then you don't need the line. And thankfully, being the writer director, I get to like edit my own writing. So sometimes it happens on set, sometimes it happens in the editing room.
And also when you write, do you visualize, like, I mean, when I used to, I mean, I'm not a writer, don't get me wrong, but when I used to write when I was younger, before I was doing short films, when I was younger, but when I would write, I would visualize when I was doing music videos, even just directing, getting the song and visualizing what I thought would look great, or what I thought would, kind of would make sense to the music and to the words. Do you ever visualize when you're writing like where it is? I mean, it might not, you might not have, I guess, the budget to make it that, but do you ever visualize, and then when you're on set, does it ever just come to fruition and just become like a spiritual, moment where you're like, this is exactly what I visualized? And, do you ever have moments like that?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I just finished a really incredible fellowship through the WGF, which is the Writers Guild Foundation. They do it in cooperation with the WGA. And it's a year-long program called the Veterans Writing Project, where they bring veterans in, and we spend a year working with WGA members, uh, developing writing and then pitching either a pilot or a feature. And it's an incredible fellowship with unbelievable access to professional writers. And I came in sort of really trying to honor the writing experience so I could try to gain as much as I could out of that. And I found that like 2 months in, I was really struggling. And I had a conversation with one of my mentors about why, because I have a master's in writing. So I've obviously been able to finish, an educational program that's just focused on writing. And I didn't know I was having this problem or these blocks in these instances. And I hadn't really shared the part about me that was the director, because I really just came in sort of singularly. And once we started talking about that, and I really sort of allowed that part of myself to show up, it suddenly made sense to everybody, including me, that like if I did not approach the work visually, I was at a disadvantage within my own toolbox. So it was a great moment to learn that I must approach the work visually, and obviously do that sort of that all the steps needed to make sure that the script is really structurally corrective and cohesive. But yeah, it starts and stops with me sort of being able to see it, because the moment that I allowed myself to envision what I was trying to write, that everything flowed and fell onto paper. And I think that comes from my background growing up in theater.
Yeah.
Because you just, I like to joke with my film director friends that like theater directors have to be able to get the actors both on and off the stage. Like you don't get to cut.
Right.
So
Right.
you really have to think through like the
Yeah.
entire series of moments.
Right.
And when you can do that, or I guess for me, because that's where I really learned how to make story happen.
Yeah.
That has to be part of me figuring out why we're coming into the scene, what we're doing while we're there, and why we're leaving when we are, and what we're going to next.
Yeah. It's got to be flowing. Yeah, for sure. And I'm very familiar with the theater. And so both of my kids went through years of theater and regional theater and all that. And so, yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It's not like you have that ability. And that's why I always ask actors even director, I'll ask you, but do you feel like your theater experience really prepared you to be a director for film and for TV and even as a writer? Because people that have never worked behind the scenes at a theater, any kind of show in the theater, Broadway or off Broadway, anything, you have a certain amount of time where it's, then you get to Hell Week, what they call it, a tech week, and then it's on, you're on, and there's no turning back at that point. And you're in front of a live audience that's going to react either good or bad to what you're putting on, and they're spending a lot of money to do so. So it's almost like the discipline has to be there as a director and and a writer, like you said. So what are your thoughts on that? Did that prepare you for that role?
Yes, I believe that everything that makes me quote unquote good comes from everything that I learned in the theater. I
Yeah.
really do believe that it is sort of like it's the grandfather of film, right? When they
Yeah.
first made film, they were basically just filming theater. So the origins of what we do are in there, and it takes a lot of, I think, skill to captivate an audience for 2 hours where you can't again, cut away. You can't show a pretty picture of like an amazing drone shot of just a cool landscape. Like, no, you're stuck with this black box, and you have to make it compelling enough that audience that you don't lose them. I think that, when I first moved to LA when I was 18, I ended up in production. And that was sort of my first experience and exposure to filmmaking. Although I was in the commercial music video world, so they were like really, really short movies,
Right.
like 3 day, like 3 day movies. But what I realized is that when you start in the theater, you're starting with a blank page. And you're coming together for a series of weeks or months, and you make pass after pass after pass, right? That's the rehearsal process. Is you dig through the material, you put it on its feet, and then you shape it, and you find those moments and you refine those moments. And then I get into film, and it's like you are chasing the sunset, you are chasing the light, you are chasing your shot.
Yeah.
And so rather than allowing sort of like this group of people to build something out of this empty space, you're kind of going the opposite direction. And I think that they're both really, really valuable. But I think for the storytelling, finding those spaces, even in the film process, where you can build that depth to what you're doing and find repetition with your department heads or your actors, you're deepening the quality of your material, and you're just helping, like, because what's the biggest commodity in film is time, right? If you have all the time in the world, you can invest that time in making sure, like, everybody, like somebody asked me, like, what's directing? I'm like, it's just getting everyone to see the same cat. Right? You say cat, everybody has a different picture that pops into your mind. And your job as the director is like to try and harness all those imaginations and get everybody to be working on the same version of that vision, right? So it's those opportunities where you can like deepen that communication or be really, really specific, that will also help once you're finally on set. Because everybody is just a little bit more in tune with each other and ready to pivot if you need to for whatever reason, and you always need to.
Yeah. But did you ever find, I mean, we talked earlier about being a veteran, and, I knew you were in the U.S. Navy. Do you find writing to be therapeutic for you, being in the military and now not being in the military? Do you find that to be a therapy for you?
It's a tough question. I am still kind of finding some peace with that, with writing. I chose writing to focus on because I spent so long in the military. I could take a laptop sort of over the horizon. So it was the discipline between writing and directing that I could focus on while I was still on active duty. And it did allow me to sort of discipline myself to where now I was paying attention to what was around me, because that was what I had at my fingertips. Those shipmates were the people that I could observe and like get to know and sort of understand as I was learning to like crack open character. So I think writing and my military experience will always be like very connected. But I'm very happy to sort of be moving into like more of a focus on my directing time now.
Yeah. You've done a lot of stuff that a lot of material that has done very well at film festivals, either being selected or winning. So talk about that experience, hitting the film festival circuit, because I know that film festivals have evolved over the years. Since my little film was in the Tacoma, the International Film Festival, but way back when, I mean, things have really changed and got bigger and a little more commercial, I guess. So what are your thoughts on the film festival, film festivals out there? And do you feel that the person, I guess, that's just getting started and has a great film, but maybe not the budget to make it look, amazing, that they have that opportunity to get their film in there, or is it just all commercial now? I mean, I don't know. I've been out of film festival circuit for a long time, but what is it like now?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I really believe in film festivals. I think that they're really critical for a ton of different reasons. I think there are definitely commercial festivals out there that will, are prestigious, and they're the ones that people say they got
Yeah.
into, and maybe they open doors or not. But I have found that the festivals that are run by people who truly love film and are understand that filmmakers have to exist in community, those have been the most rewarding film festivals for me. And I make sure anytime I'm lucky enough to be accepted into a film festival that I try to clear my schedule, because my film screening is just like it's the 18 minutes, that's the
Yeah.
runtime. But sitting in that theater watching short film after short film or feature, it's I kind of joke that it does two things. One, it reminds you you're not as bad as you think you are, right? That you like that you have
Yeah,
you're
I
okay, you're
gotcha.
part of this group of people because there are really, really good films there and you belong there as well.
Exactly.
And then the other thing is that it's really inspiring,
Yeah.
because it takes, as far as like having a great idea, you may have to sacrifice some bells and whistles because you can't afford to shoot it to the nth degree that your vision
Yeah.
wants. But it really just comes down to like two people in a room, right? You can tell a super compelling story with two people in a room and little to no camera work.
Yeah.
So if you have that need to tell a story and you have the ability to just get those elements in place, I've seen incredibly simple short films at festivals that are just so beautiful. And I've seen
Yeah.
really complex ones that aren't more impressive. Certain elements are way more impressive, right? Like when you have special effects and you have big like production design elements, of course, that's like awesome. But still, when you leave the theater after watching film after film after film, what are the ones you remember? And usually, like the ones that you remember because of how they made you feel.
Yeah. I agree. I had such a great experience at the one that mine was in. I just loved it. I mean, I was like, wow, eye opening, just to see the fantastic work out there for very low budgets. And, so perfect way to segue into this, but my listeners being independent artists, this is where I ask advice. But when, you make a film and it goes into a film festival, I mean, I'll kind of just start out by saying this, that you don't know who's going to be sitting in the audience. It could be anybody, especially if you're in a film festival in an LA market, New York market, Atlanta market, wherever a lot of the major work is. So talk about that all it takes is one person to see your work and all of a sudden it starts your career. I mean, literally. So do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I am still waiting for that one person to see my film and be like, hey, the guy with the cigar that we're all waiting to like, like
Yeah.
discover us. But it works like both ways. When one of my films was part of the Pasadena Film Festival, I was actually in progress casting and prepping another short film, and I had one of my two actors, and we were like 6 weeks away from production, and I hadn't found my second actor. And I, again, cleared my schedule and sort of told the film gods, like, I'm going to sit here till I find my Jefferson.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to write his name down and stalk him, right? And
Yeah.
it just so happened, like, this film came on, and I saw this actor, and I was like, oh my God, he just blew me away. He was exactly who I was looking for. And he happened to be there.
Yeah.
And so I was able to talk to him afterwards, and he's a really phenomenal actor. He's very successful. He's nominated for a BAFTA.
Yeah.
He was just at this little film festival, and he and I got to talk, and after we exchanged a couple emails, he came on board and was in my film. So
Yeah.
had that film festival experience not happened that way, I would maybe still be looking for my Jefferson.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example of why, when you make a film, and it doesn't matter. I talked about this on my last podcast too with some filmmakers, but I had a Handycam, Sony Handycam. This was back in I don't know, 93, I think, and I had this little, cheap. But for me, it was big. It was like I had this thing, and I had a story, and I wrote it down, and I wrote a screenplay for a short film. All my friends volunteered to be actors. The city of Minneapolis closed a street for me and closed an alley and asked me if I wanted a police officer security, and just make it happen. Just do it. Just absolutely do it. And a lot of the people, I think, wait to see if they can get a budget, or if they don't have a budget, they just don't do it. There's so many screenplays, and there's so many people who don't realize their dream, because of money, or because of ego, or because of whatever it is that they think they need to make a story. And phones, I mean, they shoot in 4K. I mean,
No.
if you have a phone, shoot something on your phone. It's
Yeah.
like you don't need a Panaflex, camera to shoot a story. If you have something and you don't have the money, just make it happen. That's the way I look at it.
Well, it's absolutely true. And I think especially people who are at the beginning stages of their career, and I still consider, I have I have 3 films in post-production now, 3 short films. And so that will bring my tally up to like my 8th film that I've directed.
Wow.
And I still consider myself a beginner, very much so. And the hardest thing writing and directing is practice, right? That's the hardest thing to get is practice. And so if you're waiting for all of the stars to line up, thinking that like that's your big break, like, and it's a hard thing, and I totally understand it, and I'm guilty of it too, but the stakes are never lower than later.
Yeah.
They're lower now. Even if they feel like they're high, they're not. They only get higher. And so take like the bold swings now, do the experimental things now, because I mean, I have learned so many lessons. I've not only learned lessons, but I've walked onto set for my next film in my head going, well, I'm not going to do that again, and somehow make the same mistake in a totally different way, right?
Yeah.
So it just takes time. It takes so much experience. And I don't think you can't fully get rid of, the little speed bumps that come your way. That is directing, that is writing, is that things don't pan out the way you intend. Like, what is it they say? Like, a plan is the place that you have to start, that you divert from, right? So we start with the plan, and then we see what happens in a lot of ways. I find that to be like the greatest expression of the creative process, because those obstacles come my way, and it's like, okay, you call yourself a creative person, prove it, right? Like, use creativity to solve the problem of creativity.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like your own, you have to prove it to yourself before anybody else. And, so, and then, one of the things I was going to, I've never brought this up in any of my shows, but, years ago, I used to, I guess, look for extra work, when they were filming in Minneapolis when I grew up. A lot of films like, Mighty Ducks and Grumpy Old Men, all these shows, I would, find out who the extras casting person was. And so they used to call me all the time to be an extra on these movies. And, so what do you think about that, for somebody that's just getting into filmmaking? I mean, you're on the set. I was on the set with all kinds of big people, and I saw how it worked, even if it was second unit, whatever, it doesn't matter. I was watching them work, watching the director work with the actors, and watching, the DP work with, the person setting up, the wart, or the props and the whatever, the set design, so is that a good way to get into the film business, to understand what goes on? I mean, I don't know if that's just kind of a thought, but that's something that might be good for somebody that's going into film.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of things that you need to learn about the film business before they say it takes 10 years to be an overnight success, kind of for a reason.
Right.
It takes seasoning. There's a lot of things that just take time. building your network, being known as a trustworthy person. There's set etiquette that you need to learn.
Yes.
And you really can't, you can read books, and reading books is really important. Podcasts like this, really important. Listening to the commentary on like DVDs, director's commentary, all that stuff is so valuable. But there are certain things that, we used to have this saying in the Navy, like the only way to gain the experience of 1,000 mid-watches is to stand 1,000 mid-watches, right?
Yep.
You need to know how hard it is to move a camera, how long it takes, and you need to see the crews that do it well, and you need to see the crews that struggle with it, because if you aspire to direct, you need to make sure that you're responsible for giving your crew a manageable, executable day, right? Because you need them at their best.
Right.
So if they're starting out the day knowing that you don't understand how long it takes to move a camera from here to here, or you can't help problem solve the shortcuts, like by saying, hey, look, I know why you're trying to do that, but I don't need to see all of this. I just need this part. So don't worry about that. Like, you have to say that for them, because they're going to give you their very best. And until you say, hey, I know you are trying to give me your very best, but for this moment, all I need is this. They'll just die trying, right? So I think anything that gains you access is absolutely fantastic. But I would just caution everybody, like, when you go, just let it be for the sake of being. Like, it's really enticing to try and turn an experience into opportunity. And sometimes it's important to just let an experience be an experience, and you can walk away without having gotten anything more than just being there, and you'll have won, right?
Just
So
absorb it, be a sponge and listen. That's the one thing I noticed as an extra on some of the movies, that people would be in the corner just gossiping and talking, and I was watching the director the entire time. Like, I wouldn't take my eyes off of the director. And one movie, John Paquin, who directed all the Santa Claus movies, and was directing Julie Bowen and Tim Allen in the scene, and he saw me just standing there looking at the whole thing, and I wasn't hanging out with any of the other extras, and he invited me over, and I was sitting in the director chair next to him as he was directing Tim Allen, because of just being quiet. I was absorbing and watching, and he saw me and invited me over, and it was a chance of a lifetime for me, and it was amazing. So again, like you said, just let it be an experience, and it ended up in an opportunity, but not in the way of, I wasn't getting any work out of it. I didn't want to. I just wanted to learn how he was doing his, making or doing this process, and I thought it was amazing. So that's well said on your part. You have three films that you said are in post production right now. So let's talk about your work and what be excited about coming out.
yes, they're three very different projects. I guess I'll start with this. So they all kind of happened simultaneously, because I ended up having to get my crew together for a reshoot for the big one. And when I was like, well, I have all these people that are coming together for this day of reshoots, I might as well just go ahead and knock out a couple more, because it's really hard to get it.
Right. It's true.
Show up, right, and stay focused. So I ended up doing the reshoot on a Tuesday. We ended up shooting a 12-page short film the Monday and Tuesday the following week, and I shot an experimental 5-minute film over the weekend. So it was like in 8 days, just like cranking out as much. Yeah. And I don't know that I'll do it again like that, but it was, it was good. So there's one small one, and this goes to what you're saying, which is like, don't wait to shoot. Like, the place that I live in, downtown Los Angeles, when I'm there, it's the underground parking garage is like a city block long, and it's really unique with like all these like kind of weird twists and turns.
Yeah.
And my cinematographer, who I know from when I was stationed in Japan, he's German Japanese.
Wow.
And he owns his own red, so I'm very, very fortunate.
Oh wow.
He literally just like,
Nice.
It's good to know somebody with a camera and many free airline miles.
Yeah.
So they'll generally come over. And one of the main actresses that I work with is my sister, and she had to be in town. So it was the three of us. And there's no script. But the idea was, this woman's driving around and she pulls into this garage after getting information that maybe her ex knows where she is after all, and she's been trying to stay off the radar.
Right.
And so she has to make this long walk from her car to her apartment, suddenly with this fear that he's there, right?
Mm.
And so it was just all coming up with really cool shots. I don't have anything like that for my reel.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It's still with the editor, but he keeps sending me smiley faces. So I assume
So
that
is it a lot of like I don't know, jump scenes, scary thing, like almost like a thriller type, like psychological thriller type thing? Okay.
Exactly. In fact, it's called Ripple. With
Nice.
the idea being that, she's just living this like calm thing, and this person drops this idea, and then it causes this like expanding ripple effect of fear.
Wow.
But I was the boom operator, and for this one shot, like I had to like take the duster off this extender pole and put
Yeah.
the microphone onto it with tape. And I'm like, there's a picture of like me underneath my cinematographer. It's just like in the purest form, exactly what you said. Like,
Right.
don't just film, just make
do it. Yeah.
something.
Put it on, put it, and I think a lot of times, like I said, I think, one of the things I always said too, because I work with independent artists a lot, and, and you don't need a huge crew. You don't need, star wagons. You don't need, I mean, I think the one music video that I did that got the most views, I don't know, like 600,000 or something like that, but it was, I had no budget. I spent $83, and it was on food for the cast, and it's the one that got the most hits and got nominated for a Grammy. The song did. So you don't know. You just don't know if you don't do it. If you just don't, go out and just do what you think is the right thing to do. You never know. You don't know what you don't know. So I always just say, just go do it. If you have an idea, shoot it. Even if it's on a phone, you can do it later, on a nice camera. If you have like a proof of concept, somebody likes it, and, and then they give you money, invest in it, to make it actually a big film. So again, just for our listeners out there, if you have an idea, just make it work. If you're a singer, sing the song, record it any way you can. Even if you don't have Pro Tools, it doesn't matter. Just put it on even a tape recorder. That's how Don McLean started writing American Pie, on a tape recorder. So you just never know what it's going to turn into. So again, just words of wisdom, just go do it. If you have an idea, go shoot it. I wanted to get into one more thing about your films. After you edit them and after you go through the whole process, talk to our listeners about the process of putting something into a film festival, because I know that it's, it has to be accepted and so forth, but how do you find the right festival to put it in? Because I'm sure there's some kind of research that goes involved or gets involved with that.
There is, and I think I'm still learning as well. Like the number of festivals in the last couple of years is something like in the 3-digit percentage like increase.
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
they're just every year there's new festivals, and sadly, there is a trend of fraudulent festivals
Oh,
that
really?
will
They
like,
just want your
yeah,
money, right? Yeah.
they just want your money, and they're like, Film Freeway is one of the main places for submissions to film festivals, and they have some advice on what to look for. They do a great job of vetting the film festivals, but
Oh, good.
there still are festivals that kind of make it through the cracks, which you just, there are some things to look for. I think it's really easy to just sort of go like, oh, these are the 87 Oscar qualifying festivals, so those are the ones I'm going to submit to. Just know that everybody submits to those,
Right.
because why
Yeah.
wouldn't you?
Right.
But the festivals that I find, like I said in the beginning, have been like the most rewarding, Pasadena, Idlewild, just had a wonderful experience at a little festival in New Jersey called Lighthouse Film Festival. Just found out that I got into the Simi Valley Film Festival, happening September 5th through the 8th.
Nice.
And those are all very, very community focused. And like, your past guests who are now friends of mine, we met at the film festival and have stayed in touch. And in fact, um, one of so my film and another film really kind of went head to head at Idlewild, and whatever sort of I won, he came in second, and what he won, I came in second. And he's a phenomenal writer and director himself, and he's got this new project, and he asked me to direct it. So that's
Wow.
forthcoming. But yeah,
Fantastic.
that's the kind of like value that you can gain from film festivals. So look for the ones that, like, when you read the reviews, they go, I felt welcomed and valued as a filmmaker, because that means that the people who run them actually care about the filmmakers.
Yeah.
And that you're going to get something out of that, which is either becoming part of their alumni circuit or meeting other really, really great filmmakers. Because what we do is really lonely. It's
Yeah.
really isolating sometimes. Like, certainly as a writer, directing is like a total high, but then you sit in your editorial bay by yourself, questioning every decision you've ever made in your entire life, right?
Yeah,
Hoping
right.
that there's something salvageable. So when you get to that point that you're in community and like your film screens, when they say like it's a victory to just be accepted and be there, it really is. Like, that's a massive accomplishment. I'm always impressed with all my fellow filmmakers and so happy to know them.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and I've just on this show alone, I've become friends with a lot of filmmakers, and it's just it's been really rewarding for myself as well. And I love listening to people's process and how they got started. And it's really neat for me. And then also before we go, I just wanted to ask you, when it's all said and done, Alysha, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to leave behind when people think of your name?
Well, that's a big question. Um, I served on multiple ships when I was in the Navy, and they talk about like the impact that you have when you're part of that ship's company, really not being able to, you don't know what the impact is until you leave, right?
Yeah.
Until you see like what you did while you were there. And so I think, for the people that I work with, I want them to remember the experience of being a partner with me in this cool thing we do, which is making film, and that their safety and their intrinsic value as a person, not because of what they can do, but just because they matter for who they are, was always more important than any shot or any piece of equipment.
Yeah. I hear you. I mean, that's great. And, I completely concur. I think that over everything, even above, doing the film itself, I mean, it's about the people really, and about the experience. And first of all, AlyshaHaran.com. I was on your website, a really well done website. And I really enjoyed watching the videos that you have up there of some of the work that you did, not only for the U.S. Navy, but one of your short films that you have up there is amazing. Just the production quality was so good, and again, the audio, cinematography, acting, everything, the story, very well done. So I want my listeners to go to AlyshaHaran.com. I'm going to spell it. So it's AlyshaHaran.com. So check it out. And then, you're always welcome back to talk about any of your projects, or just if you want to talk, you're always welcome here, because, again, just want to wish you the best of luck with your films coming out. And, it was really an honor to talk to you tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope that even if it's just just a little shot in the arm to keep going for whoever is out there, like dreaming, like keep dreaming, right? And just be brave, and just know that like the world needs you to be different. They don't need you to be the same, and make something no one's ever seen before. because that will make us all better. And so many people have come in my journey and given me like just that moment of like, yeah, I can do this. So if that counts for one person out there, I'm really happy. But I really appreciate you having me on. It's a total honor.